I was tired of chasing people for money. I had a customer that owed me $2,200. I called him once, two times, three times, and it was just overall frustrating. It was causing me a lot of stress. And the first and the main thing that I wanted to get rid of was the chasing clients to get payments. We had already provided the service. We had already done the hard work. Why couldn't they just process the payment and call it a day? In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can leverage artificial intelligence to help you collect past due invoices from customers automatically. When you're calling customers because they owe you money, because they have invoices that are 20, 30 days past due, it's awkward to call them. It's exhausting. It gets you frustrated because you're like, why can't they just process the payment when it's so easy? I already did the work. You already completed your part. Why can't they just process the payment? You kind of feel like it creates tension between you and the customer, and most importantly, it just hurts your cash flow. You're going into your CRM, and every single day you're just seeing this huge number of past due invoices, and you can't understand why they're just not paid. I didn't want to continue dealing with this, and so I decided to put together a system. If it's your first time watching my channel, my name is Andrea. I own a home service business and an automations company. And when I first started learning about AI and automations, I did not plan on having this company. I did not plan on starting a business for automations. The only thing I wanted was to truly just get rid of things that were taking so much time and so much energy from me that didn't allow me to focus on things that actually mattered, like actually working on my business, on the things that would generate more revenue, or even just time to focus on my two kids. I didn't have the time to do that because I was just doing the daily to-dos of calling past due invoices and chasing after customers that didn't want to pay or forgot to pay. So I decided to put together a system that sends text messages automatically as soon as the invoice is due for payment. It also sends emails, and it also calls the customer automatically. It uses an artificial intelligence voice agent to call the customers and let them know, hey, your invoice is now past due. Could you please let me know if there's anything we can do to help you process the payment? And it will continue to call the customer until the customer actually processes the payment. I could set it up so they call every single day, or I could set it up for them to call every other day, which is how I have it set up. Now, this system has worked great for me. And the reason for this is because I literally don't have to do anything. As soon as the invoice becomes past due, the system is aware of it and it starts sending notifications, it starts making those calls, and it's just a lot more efficient and makes sure that our customers know that they have a past due invoice where they need to process the payment immediately. It also helps because I don't get stressed out about it anymore. I've seen that our past due invoices have significantly gone down. We had a virtual assistant before that we were having her call the past due invoices and do the same job that we're having the AI agent and the automations do. And we just noticed that when she was calling, whether she was or wasn't calling, we just couldn't get that amount of past due to get lowered. For some reason, she wasn't as consistent and she wasn't following up every day or every other day. And so customers still forgot, still didn't pay. There were still some issues where just the customer didn't end up making their payment. And so with the automated system that we put together, the customers have to process the payment unless they want to continue getting calls from us, letting them know that, hey, you have not processed your payment and like what's going on here, you know? The agent that is calling them is very polite, very professional, doesn't get frustrated, doesn't get stressed out because it's an artificial intelligence agent. So it doesn't really have any emotions, so it doesn't get stressed out or get frustrated like I would. Now, just to give you some facts and statistics, the average small business loses between 5 to 10% in revenue from past due and uncollected invoices. Not to mention the time spent from having to call the customers to follow up and collect those payments. It's exhausting, it takes time. If you're paying an employee, it takes money. If it's your time, it's even more money because your wage is a lot more expensive than just hiring a virtual assistant. So it is not convenient at all. If you're feeling the same way, you're probably thinking, I have to pay my employees regardless of whether these customers are paying. It delays your payroll, if it affects your cash flow. It causes you to stress out because you're thinking, hey, I have $10,000 of uncollected invoices. That's a lot of money here on the line. And it also creates some tension between you and the customer. And you're probably thinking the same thing that I was thinking, and it's, I did not start this business or I did not acquire this company for me to be chasing after past due invoices and clients that just don't want to pay me. I mean, at the end of the day, when they have already hired you for a service, they already agreed that they were going to pay you. And you probably even have something in writing, like an estimate or a terms and agreement. And even then, it's not enough for you to get the customers to pay you. Well, it turns out that if you don't follow up on those payments as soon as you close the job, the longer that you delay that, the more likely it is that the customer is not going to pay you. So let's go over what artificial intelligence can do and what it can't do. Artificial intelligence can actually be triggered whenever an invoice has a specific amount of days past due. You can have it send emails, you can have it send text messages, you can have it call your customers, and you can even have it escalate the tone and change the dialogue depending on how past due the invoice is. For instance, our agent, when it calls for an invoice that is 20 days past due, it's just kind of following up in a nice manner saying, hey, I just wanted to follow up. Your payment hasn't been processed. What's going on? Actually, let me show you a real recording from our AI agent following up on that past due invoice. So let me show you how it works by going into our system and sharing with you exactly what our invoices look like and how we keep track of all these past due invoices. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through the database that actually keeps track of all the past due invoices. As you can see here, we're using Airtable. And so Airtable, it keeps track of all the payments that we actually end up sending to collections, the payments that we have marked as past due and that the agent is currently calling or following up on. And we also have those payments that have already been marked as paid. Now, this information is updated real time as soon as it is updated on our CRM. On our end, we're using Jobber, but you can literally connect any CRM as long as they have an API to make sure that this information is all working together. And now the third platform or the third software that we're using in order to integrate the systems is make.com. And the way Make works, let me try to find here okay, so here, call log. So this is our call log. So this is not where I want to go. Okay, so this is the agent that is following up on past due invoices. Now, because we're already paying for Jobber, and so it's already an option that they offer, they already have some specific automations that we can use whenever invoices are past due. We're using Jobber to send those emails and those text messages. However, if you don't have a CRM like Jobber, or if your CRM does not offer the option to send those emails or text messages automatically like we are, we're following up whenever an invoice is past due and it's awaiting and it's 1 day past due, 5 days past due, 10 days past due, 15 days past due, we're following up on 20 days, 25, 30, and 35 days. So those are the automations that we have set up in order to make sure that we follow up with our customers. Now, this type of follow-ups are just, again, within our CRM. However, if your CRM does not offer automations like Jobber does, you can easily create this using Make, which is what we did to have not just text messages or emails being sent to the customers, but to actually have the AI agent call the customer as soon as the invoice is more than 20 days past due. So in Make, we have several scenarios. One scenario is updating Airtable automatically as soon as an invoice is past due or as soon as an invoice has been paid. It's constantly updating this information by having a webhook to Jobber that just watches out for that particular update. As soon as the invoice has been updated, we use a data store to keep track of the actual invoice number. And then we're able to pull that invoice number again from Jobber to provide us with all the information, because this, whenever we have this particular webhook, it only provides just the invoice number. So it doesn't really give us information, and I'll show you here with an actual real sample. So we have the information here from the invoice, and it just provides that there was an invoice update. It gives us the invoice ID, which is this number that it doesn't even come up on your CRM. It's just like an encoded ID. We save that information on our database, and then we have a separate module on Jobber where we provide it with that invoice ID. So it could provide us all the details of that invoice, right? So it says invoice has been paid, the day has been issued, it says the invoice number, it provides also the amount of the payment, so $155. We have the name of the customer here, and we also have It was an hourly rate charge, and we have payment records here if there were any previous payments that have been paid from that particular invoice. All right, so we gathered all this information, and this is all we really need in order to collect from that customer. We add the record, and then we find it, and then we look for that record using the client ID number. And last but not least, it's also providing us with the client ID number. Because we already have Airtable set up in a way that has a list of all of our customers, and it does use a client ID number, we're going to be able to find the name of the client using the client ID. This is just how Jobber works. It might change for every CRM, but the way Jobber works is it just has a unique client ID that is actually encoded, and so that's what we're using to find our customers here. So then we use that client ID to save that with the record that we had previously saved. So we match the client ID, we match it to the invoice ID, and we save that in Make in a data store, and then we just make an API call to Airtable in order to pull the information and find the name of the client. Once it finds the name of the client, it just waits a little bit longer, and then it just creates an invoice. Once it's able to pull the name of the client using the client ID that we had already gathered from this step on Jobber, it finds it here on our Airtable, right? Using our database in our table. The reason why it waits here is because Airtable can't handle so many requests at the same time. And then it makes a second API call to see if this invoice already exists for that particular customer. In this case, in this scenario, you have an invoice that it's already a record that already exists. So this is a duplicate record. And so that's why it did not continue with the operation, right? With the scenario. It may send multiple webhooks. Okay, so this is a complete scenario. And so what it does, as soon as it adds the record here, it checks to make sure that this is not an existing record and this is actually an invoice that has not been updated yet. And so it finds here using this API call, it's going to pull the client ID. It's going to then wait a couple of seconds, and then it's going to pull the invoice ID to see if this is an existing invoice on Airtable. If it's a new invoice, it's just going to add the invoice, right? If it's an existing invoice, it's going to update it to show like, hey, this invoice has been paid. So here you can see that it updates the record. And so an invoice that was previously marked as past due has now been marked as paid. It sleeps and then it deletes the record so that it knows that it has been completed. And then the same thing, if it's a new invoice, it just creates a record here. If it's an existing invoice, it's going to go ahead and update the current record. So that means the invoice, let's say, was past due, customer processed the payment. It updates the information here on Airtable, and it changes this invoice from showing as past due and it marks it as paid. The reason being is because the automation that we have set up is so that it searches through all of these invoices to find an invoice that is past due. And then if it's not an existing record, it's going to go and create a new invoice so that it notifies Airtable, hey, this new invoice is now past due. So it went from awaiting payment on our CRM. We give our customers 15 days to process the payment without the payment becoming past due. And so now this invoice is no longer awaiting payment, it's now actually past due. So this is what happens here on this particular part of the scenario. Okay, now let's go on to the second part of this system. The second part of the system is actually going to trigger that call to be made to the client whenever the invoice is past due and more than 22 days past due. Now, the reason for this, again, is because we give our customers 15 days to process the payment, then the invoice becomes past due, then we're having Jobber send all of these automations via text message or email. And then if they still don't process the payment, that's when we make the call. Now, the way the second part of the system works is it uses the automations tab from Airtable to trigger an action. We have created an automation here that has multiple conditions. So whenever a record matches that the invoices are equal or greater than 22 days past due, the current status has to be 22 days past due. It has to call between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. We want to make sure that we're not calling customers at 9 p.m. at night or 10 or 2 a.m. in the morning. And then we're also making that one call on Tuesdays. So we don't have it set up so that it calls every single day. We're calling once a week, which is on Tuesdays. You can set it up on your end to call every single day if that's something that you wanted to do. we feel like that may be a little bit too aggressive. But if your customers don't want to pay, you do want to be a little bit more aggressive, right? So on our end, we're just selecting the agent to call if it's Tuesday, or if you want to call every other day, that's okay as well. Now, whenever these conditions match a record, it triggers a script, and it's going to trigger a webhook, right? And so this webhook is actually connected to Airtable here, and it just watches the response, right? So it triggers this webhook. Then once it triggers the webhook, it provides the invoice ID number. It searches for that invoice on Jobber, and we're gonna go ahead and take a look at that here. Gonna check how it works. So that just happened this morning, right? So the webhook triggers the record ID from Airtable, it triggers the invoice ID, and it says how many days an invoice has passed due. To be very honest with you, all of the invoices that we have that are past due, and I can check on this here, the vast majority of the invoices that we have past due or that we have sent to collections are all like 200, 175 days. So this was actually before we implemented the collections agent, and you can see that all of these ones were literally from last year. And so this one is also 175 days. So this one, for instance, we would need to see what happens with this one's 114 days. So the ones that don't want to pay that you see are here, and this ones we have not sent to collections yet, but they are customers that did not want to pay the invoice long before we had our collections agent. So for this ones that it's been so long, it's almost going to be a year, we really have to take some kind of legal action here and like open a claim with the small claims court or something along those lines. But the positive thing is that we can see here that after implementing our collections agent, we really only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 past due invoices. After implementing this collections agent, we have definitely seen a huge decrease on the number of past due invoices, and the payments actually ended up as uncollected, because that is what we had before, and it was just a complete nightmare. It gets really exhausting on a personal level because you do take your business very, very personal, and so you start feeling like people don't want to pay you. You feel like you're not making money. You're kind of like, it just becomes a ball of feelings, of frustrations, of things that you don't really have to deal with when you implement this kind of system. So going back to how the system works, the system and here automations that I had mentioned here, it's on our end, it's triggering a call once a week for all of those past due invoices, right? And whenever that automation is triggered, we're then able to search on Jobber just to make sure. And the reason why we're searching this, we already have all the information on Airtable, so we could really import it on Airtable. But we want to make sure that the information is 100% accurate and 100% up to date. And so that's the reason we're searching through our CRM again to make sure that this invoice is actually still past due, that the client has not processed the payment, and the client still owes $1,190. Now we pull that client and then we create that call. So I want to go ahead and find this call on our voice agent. The voice agent that we're using is Retell AI. So let's go on to discuss how Retell AI works. Retell AI uses artificial intelligence to make those phone calls. And so here on Retell AI, the way it works is you're able to set up a number of agents here. So this is our business account here, and you can see that this is the amount that we have for our upcoming invoice. It's only $60, and this voice agent takes all of our business calls. It makes outbound calls for past due invoices. It really spends a lot of time on the phone, and so it's very cost efficient. The way the agent works, you can actually set it up to to connect to 11 labs, and so you can use the voice that you want to use. On our end, we're using Adrian. We just feel like he's very aligned with our customers.
Hi, I'm Adrian, your friendly virtual helper, always here to make your daily tasks easier and stress-free.
So he's polite, friendly, professional, and so we're using Adrian, and then we're using GPT 4.0. You can actually connect it to Claude or Gemini if it's something that you wanted to use. We found that ChatGPT 4.0, the GPT 4.0 from OpenAI works perfectly fine. And then we trained our agent. So the way we trained our agent is we told them that, hey, you're Adrian, you're customer service representative for Angular Lawn and Landscape. Your objective is to engage with customers with overdue invoices in a respectful, understanding conversation, aiming to identify any issues and facilitate prompt payment. We're providing Adrian with dynamic variables, and so whenever Adrian receives this information, he's going to receive the number of days that the invoice has been past due. So we are actually providing Adrian here with the phone number that it needs to call, the agent ID that we're using, and we're providing Adrian with the following dynamic variables. We're getting the information again from Jobber, from this previous module, and we're giving it the first name, the last name of the customer. If it's a company name, we're giving it an invoice number, and we're giving it the number of days past due, phone number, email, property address, the invoice total. If the customer has made previous payment, Adrian is able to see that on his end as well, so he knows that, particularly Jobber, it's going to show you always the total amount due. So it's not going to show you how much the client owes, like the balance, but it's just going to show you the total amount of the invoice. And so we want to make sure that Adrian doesn't say to the customer like, oh, you owe $2,000 when the client has already made a payment for $1,000, because it can get a bit frustrating for the customer. So if Adrian is able to see the previous payments, it's able to inform the customer of the payments that they have already made. It has the invoice date, invoice due date, invoice ID, and then the record ID. So let's go back to Retell AI. Again, we're having Adrian use this dynamic variables, and we're notifying Adrian here in our prompt, in our notes, that Adrian should use the dynamic variables that we're providing in order to use it to collect on past due invoices. Now, this is a very simple prompt. We're not getting too technical with Adrian, but we're also telling Adrian that he should change the tone and the demeanor of the call depending on how many days the invoice is past due. So if an invoice is 12 days past due, he should be friendly and warm, because he's just calling and saying like, hey, maybe you forgot, what's going on? Could we do anything to make sure that you process that payment, right? If it's 22 days past due, then he should be more professional and more solutions oriented. He should now be a little more focused on making sure that he collects on that past due invoice. And then if it's 30 days past due, he should be more assertive and more firm, right? And so the objective here, we're reminding Adrian the objective for every single call. And so for the 12 days past due, it's a gentle reminder to the customer about the invoice that is now overdue and offering assistance. The one that's 22 days past due, it's informing the customer about that we're going to be adding a late payment to encourage immediate payment. And if it's 30 days past due, it's going to issue a final warning saying, hey, we're going to take legal action if you don't process this payment. So it's very simple. Now I want to show you and go through a recording, one of those recordings on the calls. Let's see here. And we're going to look, so a lot of them have voicemail, they go to voicemail. So for instance, this one, we're going to look at what the voicemail.
Hi, you've reached Julie Jarvie. Please leave me a message and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks and have a wonderful day.
So one of the things that's very important whenever setting up your collections agent is making sure that you follow the Fair Debt Collections Act. And so because you can get in a lot of trouble if you're harassing customers and just saying like, I'm going to send you to jail for not making your payment or things like that, they can actually take you to court and they're very likely to win. So you want to make sure that whenever you're calling these customers, implement a system, you're saying the right things and you know exactly what things you cannot say. And the reason why when leaving a voicemail, it's very generic, and you'll see that Adrian only says, we left a message regarding an important matter concerning your account and provided the callback information or the callback phone number. The reason for this is because when leaving a voicemail, you cannot say, hey, you owe a bunch of money, you're doing this, that. You cannot do that. So legally, it's something that can't be done and can cause, like, it can actually backfire on us. And so that's the reason you leave that kind of voicemail. Now, if you verify that you're actually speaking to the correct person and the person that actually owes that invoice, then you can have a different type of conversation. Let's listen to this call.
Hello, Jared. This is Adrian with Angular Lawn and Landscape. I'm reaching out regarding your invoice dated April 2nd, 2025, which according to our records is now 39 days past due. I wanted to check in and see if there was any issue or reason that has prevented the payment from being processed.
I need to know what property this is.
Of course, Jared. The invoice is for services provided at the property located at 2734 Northeast 27th Court in Lighthouse Point. Does that help clarify?
Yes.
Great. Is there anything preventing you from
Yes.
processing the payment for this invoice, or would you like assistance in accessing your client portal to make the payment?
Service was supposed to be suspended. At
I
that
understand,
point.
Jared. Thank you for letting me know, Jared. I've informed our office about your concern regarding the service suspension at the time of the invoice. Someone from our team will review this and get back to you shortly to address the situation. Let me know if there's anything else I can assist you with in the meantime.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, Jared. If you have any further questions or concerns, feel free to reach out. Have a great day.
You see, I love it. It does the job. Whenever the agent, gets a person like Jared who's actually disputing the invoice, it's going to send a text message to a specific phone number that we assign it to saying, hey, Jared, this is disputing this invoice because it's saying the service was supposed to be suspended. I'm going to show you exactly the type of text message that was sent. So it should be somewhere here. So you'll see here, there's this custom webhook that is triggered whenever the agent says, hey, let's notify the office about an issue with an invoice or some kind of issue. And so it triggered this webhook saying notify the office. So it has here the information, and it's going to send a text message via Twilio to our office phone number, and it's saying Jared mentioned that service was supposed to be suspended at the time of the invoice dated 2025 April 2nd. He believes this may have impacted the payment status. And so that's a text message that we're receiving. So we know that now we need to call Jared personally to discuss this on seeing, if he canceled before actually providing that one service, or if it was actually that he canceled after we had already provided the service, because that's what makes a difference on whether the invoice should be paid by Jared or not. And so that is how the system works. I hope this helped you get at least some kind of ideas on what you can implement on your business to make sure that you stop overwhelming yourself, specifically with this type of frustrating task like collecting on pass-through invoices and chasing clients, because it can get really exhausting. One of the things that you have to make sure when setting up an automations agent that is calling customers to get payments is, one, making sure that you comply with the actual laws to ensure that you're not actually harassing your customers and they can't go to court and say that you were actually harassing them. Two, you want to make sure that your agent is set up correctly, because if you don't set up your agent correctly, it's actually going to call the customers and maybe use a different type of tone that you wanted to use. It's not going to be as emotionally understanding as your AI is supposed to be, even though it cannot be 100% accurate in terms of emotions. It can understand some kind of cues and understand a bit on how the tone should be for a particular call. Third thing is, you want to make sure that your AI agent or your automations that you're triggering, whether it's a text message or an invoice, it's not being triggered to customers that had actually processed their payment, because they're going to get really pissed off and frustrated. And you're going to actually convert a customer that was happy, that was okay, into a pissed off and frustrated customer. So that's the last thing that you want to do. And I say this because of experience, because we have called customers before past due. And that's the reason why we're double checking with the CRM to ensure the customer is actually past due. You don't want to make this mistake. It can be costly. You also want to make sure that your agent is trained so that it provides a link so the customer can actually process the payment. If they say to the agent, hey, let me send you a link so you can process your payment right away, or that your agent can actually take payments over the phone. If you don't do that, you're kind of going to lose the purpose of the call, because you want to make sure that everything's handled in that one call, at least as best as possible. So guys, how can you build this into your system? So I have already walked you through the steps that we take using Make, Airtable. So you just really need to be a little bit tech savvy to kind of understand. And if you want to do it on your own, you could definitely do so. There's a million videos, and I can even put something a lot more detailed. If it's something that you wanted me to do, just let me know in the comment section. Now, if you want this to be done for you, I have also put a link for you to access my calendar and book a call with me. And now I can actually implement this into your business, and we can make sure that it's specifically targeting your business needs and that the agent is specifically trained and prompt and everything is aligned with what you need in your business. So I hope this video helps. I hope this at least gives you some ideas and helps you change your current workflow. Before, I was completely dreading work days when I had to call clients. I was pushing away making those calls. It was just causing me a lot of frustration and stress, and it wasn't something that I wanted to do. When hiring a virtual assistant, I found that we were still encountering the same type of issues because they weren't as consistent on following up on those past due invoices. So the results were really the same. And after implementing this collections agent, we found that now we don't collect on just 60% of those past due invoices like we were doing before. We're collecting really on 90%, 95% of those past due invoices. So it's really, really made a change on our business. And the best part of all is that I don't think about it anymore. It's not something that I'm wasting my time on or using brain power to think about it, because now I don't really need to. It's doing it all on its own. And this is really what happens when artificial intelligence stops being just a hype and you're actually using it and implementing it into your business to actually save you time and actually save you money. Because this is what saves you that 5 and 10% of revenue that we discussed at the beginning of the video. Now guys, we've come to the end of the video. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the little bell button to make sure that you get notified whenever I have a new video uploaded. I'm always bringing you new tips about how you can improve your business, how you can improve your systems, workflow, and procedures to make sure that you're saving money or saving time. But we can't continue to be the business owners that barely have time to actually work on the things that matter in our business, or that barely have time to spend time with our families, because that's not really what we got into business with. You might as well just stay in a 9 to 5, right?